welcome to Space to Grow, the podcast where we share the stories behind the best European space startups. On this episode, we talk with Safouane Benamer, co-founder and chief executive officer of OPUS Aerospace, a company developing small launchers for spacecraft. In the episode, we talk with Safouane about his past experience, how he came and how he decided to build a rocket company, particularly why he decided to build a rocket company, and technicalities and the details of the rockets he's building, and many more. Hope you like it. Welcome, Safouane, to the second episode of Space to Grow.
Hello, thank you for inviting me to this episode.
Yeah, I'm very much looking forward to this conversation because, as we were speaking just briefly before, you've done a lot of things. So let's introduce yourself now. You are the chief executive officer and the co-founder of OPUS Aerospace currently.
Yes, exactly. Yes.
And well, you've done so many more things. So let's first start by introducing what you do now at OPUS Aerospace, and then we jump back to your background and your experience.
So with Opus, what we try to do is like to build a space transportation system for small payload and satellite. And the company was founded at the end of 2019, and we are a new space startup based in France.
So you're building small launchers?
Yes. Yes.
And the first question is why?
Yeah. So to get back, kind of in a bit of my experience, I was at my end studies internship. I was at the CNRS. I was working on the ExoMars rover instrument, and I saw let's say maybe two big things. The first thing was the launch of I think it was Taranis by Vega rocket, and it was a bit of failure, if I'm not mistaken, because there were a problem on the Vega C last stage. And the second thing I saw, let's say, a team of researchers building a CubeSat and launched it. And it was, let's say, two different events that happened in the same time of my internship. And I saw that the team of researchers built the CubeSat quite fast. The CubeSat name was UVS CubeSat, and it was really inspiring how they wanted to build, let's say, a small satellite, to put it into orbit, to study, let's say, it was, I think, the effect of the sun or sun winds regarding, let's say, Earth and so on. And it was really inspiring. And I saw that in let's say, the research field, time is a bit, let's say, there is a lot of time will pass between, let's say, the initial project, let's say, demand until, let's say, the launch of the satellite. So I wanted to build, let's say, a launch solution in order, let's say, to accelerate maybe, and to propose an alternative solution to launch a small satellite and small payload into space. Sorry, this is what initially fueled my ambition or my goal somehow. I was really a fan of space exploration, so it was really something that I wanted to participate into it, regarding, let's say, all this space race 2.0 that we are living currently in Europe.
Indeed, but so you mentioned you wanted to participate in the space exploration, and my question would be, why did you decide to, build your own company instead of joining an existing one, an existing launcher company in Europe? There were back in the days a few. So why the choice of building your own?
Back in the days in 2019, there were no small launcher company. I think it was only, let's say, starting a bit. So there were Opus who started in 2019. I think there were also Latitude in the beginning, X Venture Orbital Systems. And there were no, let's say, launch solution adapt to a small satellite. And they were like, I felt like it was a beginning of, let's say, a new era in Europe from the space exploration and new space race. And it was something that happens, let's say, in beginning of 2000s, say, in the US. And it was something really, it was kind of a train, So either you jump on the train or either you see the train advancing. So, and I think that the best thing that I can do from my side is to jump on the train and try at least to build a launch solution and the company.
That's incredible. And how it's true that you have to, when you see the opportunity, you have to take it. Otherwise, you don't know
Mhm.
if it might come back. But how do
Yeah.
you? So it's impressive, the bravery that you have, and that requires, because how do you go from doing an internship, being passionate about the space industry, to just moving to build a rocket company and actually building a rocket? How do you go from concept to reality, no?
So from my past experience, I'm an aerospace engineer from IPSA, and I did, let's say, I passed through HEC Paris, which is, let's say, more into business administration and so on school, through a Challenge Plus program. And and regarding, let's say, when I was an aerospace engineer, we did small rockets. So I were into the Perseus program, which was funded by the CNES. It was, let's say, a program dedicated to student laboratories and, let's say, SMEs. So we worked with SMEs and so on. And with, let's say, the goal of building, let's say, future space systems, like at least do research on future space system. So we did small rockets from 2 meters to 6 meters, let's say, quite small a bit, somehow the size of Messange. And we launched this rocket from Kiruna, Messange Kiruna, SSC, or from the south of France. So they were like an annual event. So we're like a rocketry club, and we did that every summer or around April each year. And so in the end, I'm kind of a space geek, if I may. And so after, let's say, the internship and let's say this new era coming in, I was in a position where I can do maybe a PhD, or I can do engineering, just a normal, let's say, space engineering at Airbus or Thales back in time, or founding my first company. So I was discussing with some co-founders, and we were discussing with experts from Onera, from Air Liquide, and so on. And we're only discussing about what we wanted to do. So it was only the project in the beginning. And we saw that we had an idea, and we saw that people who we were talking to, who are expert in their field, wanted to help us build this idea. And it was really inspiring. And it was only an idea with a bunch of young people with 25, 24, and so on. And we saw that people wanted to help us build this idea, wanted to do some partnership and so on. And this is how we went, let's say, from the idea to maybe, let's say, okay, there is a need in the market. We can see some different use case. So why not? And we have an expertise of building small rocket. Why not building a company? And this is how it went, let's say.
So what you were mentioning, your expertise in sounding rockets back in university, was it related to the European rocketry competition or something
We never
different?
did Euroc. We did only CESpace. It was a French competition south of France. There were a lot of different rocketry clubs from Japan, I think, as well, from South America, who came in to learn the rocket. And this is where we did or learned a lot about aerospace engineering and rockets, but more importantly, from let's say, technical point of view and technical development, it was really the experience with the CNES through the Perseus program where we learned a lot. So we're talking to a lot of different people and lots of experts of the CNES. And until now, we are working with them on Messange. This is how, so we went from students to professionals. And this is kind of the beauty, let's say, of the program, is that one of the objectives of the program was to push, let's say, entrepreneurship, or to make, let's say, students enjoy, let's say, space engineering and so on. So I think it's really fulfilled this objective, because I don't think if we had, let's say, this program, I will be in space engineering, to be honest.
Well, that's amazing. It has for surely for sure
Yes.
brought by some good entrepreneurs. But so now we will talk about your CNES partnership in a minute. But
Yeah.
how do you? So okay, let's say you're in the position, you just finished university, you finish your internship, you decide you want to start a company, a rocket company, because you've seen a gap in the market and you want to
Mhm.
try to address it. You've got expertise, you've got past experience, you've got knowledge, you've assembled the team. Well, we will move into how you met your co-founders, but how do you, well, how do you build a company and say, okay, how do you start working on a rocket?
So basically, let's say there are kind of two ways. There's like in a building a startup, there's like the bootstrap, or there's like raising money and so on. And one of we are, let's say, in a field where it's deep tech, industrial plus space. It's like let's say it's the riskiest environment so far. and
Indeed.
so basically the obvious let's say solution was to raise, let's say, money. So what we did is like we signed the first contract, I think, with the CNES on Messange, and we let's say structured the team and the roadmap in order to raise money. And so we raised, let's say, a first round, and then afterward we hired, let's say, a lot of engineers and a lot of amazing people to work on the rocket itself. So this is how it went. So basically, what we did is like as we demonstrate maybe small traction, we we could, let's say okay, this is what we signed, this is where we are going, and this is why we need to raise money. And this is so in let's say this stage, you obviously talk with, let's say, some business angels, some small or micro fund, or with some VCs or big business angels and so on, and or the BPE, French Public Investment Bank, and you structure your roadmap and you say this is where, let's say, how much budget I need, how much people I need, and so on, and you pursue, let's say, the goal. So after you raise money, you need to execute the development. So you raise money on a plan and then you execute the development so far. For sure, there is a lot of different problems or stuff that you didn't anticipate, and the main thing is to keep going and to focus on the end goal each time. So how we went, let's say, from concept to let's say reality. And with the engineering team, it helped us a lot to let's say build things. So you see little by little at the project in advance that you recruit the right people. Let's say you recruit 2 people per week or 1 people per month or something like that, and you see the team little by little grow. So so there's kind of a phase where it's really happy. It's really like you don't see it like this. You see it like little by little. So you enjoy really the ride. And the best thing in this adventure is the human side, to be completely honest. Treat let's say, this with the technological side where you see a lot of hardware and so on.
Of course. Like without people, rockets are there's no
Nothing.
point in having rockets if you don't have the people behind it, right? But
Exactly.
and so how do you go and approach? Well, no, let's take a step back. And how did you meet your co-founders?
Basically, I meet them through the program of Perseus program, or through Rocketry Club. So it's how we met. So we knew each other. Let's say we're in 2 different let's say Rocketry Club, and we worked together in some programs and so on. And this is how we met, and this is how we wanted to start a rocket company afterwards.
So it's a group of rocket enthusiasts.
Exactly. So I think currently in Opus, I have, let's say, two people from my initial rocketry club, and which were in the same school as me, and I think the software our software lead is someone who was recommended by one of my co-founders, and this is how we got, let's say the initial team a bit.
And now moving back to the finances that you mentioned earlier and raising investment,
Mhm.
it's well, you've mentioned it perfectly. It's probably the most difficult or challenging and capital intensive industry that you started your company on.
Yeah.
And well, there's this saying, you might have heard it, that how do you make a small fortune in rockets? By building rockets? Well, you start with the big one. So what do you I find it quite, I mean, it's true, no? Because
I agree.
until the time that from the moment that you start until the time that you start getting money from your customers, Well, it's a long way, no, from.
Exactly. So there's there's a big gap between especially when you start a small rocket. I think it was Peter Beck who was talking about it. A small rocket is really, let's say, difficult from an engineering point of view to because you need a bit to let's say downsize maybe some initial system were built for small rocket and so on. Because initially we did only big rockets, like Ariane 5, Ariane 6, and so on, especially in Europe, Vega, and so it's kind of new in Europe. It was the case, I think, in the US in the 2000 and 2010, but not anymore, I think. So we wanted, let's say, to find a way to build the first product and to launch it quite fast. So this is why we did Messange initially. So we wanted to build. Initially, it was only a demonstrator, and in the end, it ended up as a commercial vehicle. So we say, okay, why not building the first product, easy one, and launch it, and to, let's say, iterate on it until, let's say, getting it to a certain level, and then afterward, let's say, getting revenue from let's say this first business line and finance a bit the other plans that we have for the company. And this is what we wanted to do. In, let's say, in between, we had, let's say, some services. So for example, currently we have a test area, and we provided, let's say, test opportunities to startups who came to test at our facility. So there is Alpha Impulsion and Hydrogen who came in, and we saw, let's say, that it's a potential evolution of the business so far. And we have, let's say, worked a bit on space system regarding, let's say, the development of our rocket engine turbos. And we saw that it could, let's say, interest some clients. The thing is, you need really to focus on the core business in order before starting to develop, let's say, the other business unit. Otherwise, as you are a young company, you will, let's say, focus on too many stuff and nothing will advance as you want. So we are really, let's say, we really try to focus a lot on Messange for the moment, even though sometimes when the right opportunities is coming, we propose, let's say, space system, or we propose, let's say, some testing facility services and so on. But we currently we only focus on the development of Messange to deliver it quite fast for the suborbital market. This is what we are doing so far. And then afterward, I think raising money is let's say the next step. But what we want to show is that we are raising money in order, let's say, to finance new, let's say, business unit or new, let's say, project, not on the same project each time. So this is what our strategy, let's say, or our business model so far.
I was going to ask you about that, but let's stop on your Messange rocket. You can perhaps introduce it to the audience. It's a suborbital rocket. The first rocket OPUS Aerospace is developing. And
yes.
Well, what does it do? What's the goal of the rocket? What's your goal?
So the rocket is a small vehicle. So let's say it's 4.7 meter, around 5 meter, let's say, and 16 centimeter in diameter. It's propelled by the turbos engine. It's a peroxide H2O2 and propane, pressure-fed vehicle. The cycle, sorry. The what we developed so far with the rocket itself is a complete launch system. Let's say from a ground infrastructure to, let's say, a complete, let's say, launch solution. So ground infrastructure and the vehicle itself. We want to use initially Messange started as a demonstrator. As we signed, let's say, contract with an R&D contract with the CNES on, let's say, reusable heat shield, 3D printed reusable heat shield. And we started, let's say, on this first contract. So the CNES payload is on the top, let's say, of the fairing. And I think we published a video with, let's say, the testing of the heat shield. It was really nice.
It actually looks amazing.
It was really amazing to see it. And we developed, let's say, this first version of the vehicle. So the first version of the vehicle had 1 kilogram of payload, and it's not a lot. And let's say the aim of the evolution of the vehicle from an iterative point of view, there will be like a Messange V2 with, let's say, optimization from thrust point of view, mass point of view, not really the electronic, maybe a bit. And we are targeting it for Q2 2026. And then after the final one, which is kind of Messange Next and the Messange, the really commercial vehicle with the 10 kilo of payload to an altitude between 100 kilometer and 150 kilometer with minimum 10 kilo of payload. So Messange will only focus on the suborbital, let's say, market to provide, let's say, kind of a test solution for, let's say, labs, small satellite company want to test maybe their payload or the instrument and so on to let's say research for microgravity and to defense, let's say, market.
That's something that Rocket Lab has shown, that you can use the Electron rocket for hypersonic testing, which
Exactly.
is
Exactly. I'm quite fan of the business, let's say, model of Rocket Lab, but let's say they started with a big one and little by little went to, let's say, the suborbital one. Even if they did some demonstrator and so on, and they are switching little by little to space systems. And I think that the way they build the company and the way they attack the market is really amazing, and how they execute, let's say, is really mind blowing, to be honest.
indeed. Of course, they are an example to follow. And
Thank you.
talking about that, you in a way are also planning on having an orbital rocket, right?
Yes, exactly, yes. So Messange is kind of our let's say a commercial vehicle, let's say for let's say clients and so on, but also a test bed from our side. So we want to use, let's say, this rocket to work on different, let's say, systems, avionics, engines, let's say the different cycles of propulsive cycles and so on, and on, let's say, the validation of maybe our kind of prototype or subscales of the structure. And therefore, let's say we scale, let's say, to Sterne, which is kind of Sterne is our commercial vehicle, and we do it in two steps. We do a suborbital one, and then after we do an orbital one. Capacity of this rocket is to put up to 300 kilograms of payload in suborbital or orbital, and in order, let's say, to provide, let's say, a launch solution for small satellite or small payload.
Okay. And how is it? Have you started development of the
Yeah,
Stern rocket?
we started it, let's say, from the architecture point of view, and I think the first, let's say, rollout would starting from let's say June 2025 until the end of the year. And let's say the team of Messange will little by little switch to Sterne. There will be, let's say, I think they will be focused on Messange around 50% between, let's say, September and December. And then afterward, I think little by little, our involvement into Messange will decrease because there will be only exploitation on the Messange vehicle.
So you've got a very busy year ahead. And how is it?
Yes.
How is it to transition from a suborbital, relatively small rocket to a suborbital but orbital, much larger rocket? What are the challenges?
It's really challenging, to be honest. It's there's like you need to play, let's say, different factors like funding of the company and so on, technical, let's say, capability and execution, building the team and so on, structurization of the company, positions and so on. And it's really it's really challenging. But from a technical point of view, we aim, let's say, to use all the technology that you use on Messange so far as maybe bricks or an incremental brick for Sterne. For example, on the engine currently, we will use it as a kick stage, for example, same for the avionics. And this is where we started, let's say, focusing so far. So we start from the head and little by little we go down. The big challenge, I say, is not from finding the right partners because we with the partners we have currently and we work on, they can, let's say, build a bigger tank or a big thing. So there's a lot of studies to do in order, let's say, to meet the right requirement, right specifications, and to maybe to try to stay on the same technology that we developed so far on the small prototype on Messange. The big challenge from our side is on from an infrastructure point of view. So scaling, let's say the test area. Currently, we are focusing on going from 400 meters square to 20,000 meters square testing facility, still in Brittany. So it's something that we are really preparing and thinking about, because it's something much bigger than what we have currently, and we are not in the same size of the rocket engines or of tanks. So there is a lot of regulation plus administrative stuff to do, for sure. And there is as well, yeah, it was the last one. And there is as well a challenging, let's say, a technical environment to set in order, let's say, to do the testing and to pursue the testing. Uh, for me, let's say the big challenge is more on the testing quite fast. This is where we learn a lot. So we want really to keep, let's say, this testing let's say facility or let's say philosophy. Like even though we manufacture with partners and so on, or we internal not verticalize quite fast or something like that, we want to keep really to test. This is quite important for us, because we with the test we can, let's say, more anticipate the problems of our development so far.
Of course. I have several questions came up. I was writing them here. The first one is, how do you choose, that you mentioned this at the start, how do you choose what parts of the rocket to delegate to subcontractors and what parts of the rocket to build in-house?
It's mainly a trade-off between what technology you want to let's say manage and you have the capacity to, and what technology you want to outsource and you can let's say internalize afterwards. So it's kind of a trade-off between this. This is like from a technological point of view, and after there is a question of funding, of i.e. intellectual property, and as well for control export and so on. This is a question that you need to think about from a strategy point of view. From our side, what we chose to do is like to internalize as much as possible from a study point of view and R&D. The manufacturing currently is done by a lot of our partners. We start some manufacturing at the end of the year, beginning of next year, starting from September, because we are preparing our factory, and and little by little we will internalize some of the production or some of the manufacturing. We did so because you need to do a trade-off between what are you going to deliver as let's say recurring lunches and so on. For example, if you lunch 4 to 10 times a year, is it interesting to internalize directly, or is it interesting to internalize when you reach, let's say, the range of 10 per year capacity? It's a question that that need to be asked and to be thought about. From our side, we didn't want to invest a lot at start into manufacturing capacity, and because we don't think that it's a right approach in Europe, especially with the funding, with the funding situation, and with the development.
We will talk about the situation in Europe in a bit.
Yeah.
But before I wanted to mention as well, the development of the ground infrastructure or the launcher infrastructure is very costly, and it reminded me when Elon Musk talked about the Starship Tower.
Yes,
he mentioned that it's even more complicated to build the tower than the rocket itself. No,
exactly,
of course, I think it's a different scale, but yeah, can you talk about what the launch infrastructure is apart from the rocket, and yeah, how is that development going?
Yes, it's so with the Messange, we developed, let's say, a range. There is, let's say, the testing, let's say, test bench of where we test, let's say, all the final configuration of the rocket. So we put the rocket on the test stand, and then we fire the engine basically, and we do kind of the let's say the launch, the flight configuration. Sorry. And this is like one of the main goal of the testing facility we have so far in Brittany. And there is, let's say, the launch ramp, which will help us to launch, let's say, the vehicle. So the launch vehicle, it's the launch ramp. Sorry, is kind of a vertical, let's say, pad, and we designed it in house. So it's a 12 meter long launch ramp, and it's built on a mobile platform. It was something that we thought about it as let's do it in one shot. So the test, let's say, the test stand is connected to what we call, let's say, skid. Like there is a propane skid, the peroxide skid, the pressurization skid, and it's kind of some boxes that help us to let's say fill and fill, let's say, the tanks and so on, and to do, let's say, all the operations. And so we use that for our test stand, and we use that as well for the lunch. So we tried, let's say, to let's say invest once, not twice, let's say in the ground infrastructure. And so the only thing that we build to support the Messange, let's say, lunch is a mobile lunch platform. And so the common, let's say, the common infrastructure somehow is a skid. And from a launch point of view, we talk about partnership with the CNES, and this is what we announced last year, in order to launch it from Kourou. So we have the chance to work with them and to have their expertise in order, let's say, to finalize the ground infrastructure. I think that for we're not proceed with the same in the same process with Sterne, because it's a much bigger vehicle and the investment is big. There are some initiative in order to have, let's say, a common launch pad for every launchers in Europe, and we are following this, and we are talking, let's say, with some partners such as, for example, Space Dreams, and I think it's a good thing that there is, let's say, a way to have a common launch pad and so on. But it's only a question of trade-off between cost and how much fast we can advance on this.
Well, that would definitely save a lot of development time
Exactly, yes,
if there was a shared infrastructure.
exactly.
Okay, you mentioning your partnership with Knes, you've got a big milestone ahead in 2025, right?
Yes, yes. It's
So you're
really.
launching for the
Mhm,
first time. You're launching for the first time from Kourou,
mhm,
your Messange rocket.
mhm. Exactly. So it's really something that we really wanted to do. It was really one of our main goals. Starting from the Messange program, we said that we wanted to launch it from Kourou. It was really our end goal. We talked with different, let's say, launch pads and so on, but we really wanted to launch from Kourou to have, let's say, the to work with the CNES and to have the expertise of ISA and CNES, let's say, partnership on the Europe Space Center, spaceport. And it was the partnership started. I think the discussion started in around 2022, and let's say follow up, let's say, the development of the system, and then after with our fundraising and so on, and we had the chance to finalize, let's say, everything at the end of last year. And we really want to thank the CNES for, let's say, supporting us in this journey, and it was really a big achievement for us in order to really sign this contract and to launch from the Sounding Rocket launchpad.
And in fact, that launchpad has not been used. Well, I might be wrong here, but it has not been used until, well, you will be the first one in using it since a long time, right? Because it was
Yeah,
closed up until
yeah.
recently.
The last time it was used, I think it was in 1992 with the Super Arcas sounding rockets. So sounding rocket, let's say, program was uh, there's some sounding rocket, let's say, in Europe, and I think they stopped launching rockets from Kourou since 1992. And we when we discussed with the CNAS, we saw that there's maybe the diamond launch, let's say, launch site, and but there were, let's say, a lot of launchers on this side, and our project was not so let's say not in the size of maybe launching from this launch pad. So we talk about this. It's not so far from the technical site, I think 7 kilometers. And when we discuss with the CNES, we say, okay, we bring, let's say, the ground infrastructure, but if you can help us into, let's say, do the operation safety side and to help us with your expertise of, let's say, the safety process, because it's a big process, and there is a lot of challenging, let's say, uh, thing that you need to know somehow, applicable and not applicable to, let's say, sounding rockets. And it was something that we are working. So the methodology, the safety methodology, is a big topic that we are currently talking with the CNES, and this is how we ended up into this launch site. Sorry.
I can imagine that, the behind the scenes of launching a rocket must be quite, like, yeah, quite complex to
Honestly,
navigate that situation.
it was a big meetings and a lot of presentation and a lot of discussion. It was really fun, to be honest, and we really felt lucky, if I may, because we are discussing with, for example, the same team or the same people that work on, for example, Ariane 6, and we'll do maybe the safety process and so on. And it's from CNES side or CSG side, and it's something that you can't imagine when you have like 28 years old or 27 years old, or all my engineers, I think, who are between 25 and 35. So it's a big thing that it's a big chance for us to discuss with the CNES and ESA about launching Formula FS. And really, behind the scene is quite fun. A bit of pressure, and you discover sometimes a lot of stuff as well, because you need this document and not this document. And it's really fun, to be honest.
I can imagine. Okay, before we move into the market, I wanted to ask you about your reusable heat shield. So,
Yes.
are you planning on reuse the Stern rocket, or what are your plans with
Yeah, we are
this
planning
with this
to use the
project?
Sterne rocket on the first stage plus on the fairing, not on the second stage. From which we saw from business model point of view, it will be quite hard on the second one. It's not very it's really costly and not very interesting for us. And this is why we are, let's say, trying to work on the heat shield or the reusability solution. On Messange, it's the same. We recover it by parachute, and this is why it's quite important to work on Messange and Messange Next, because it's kind of the same. This is where we are going to develop, let's say, or try to develop a POC from the algorithm point of view, site algorithm point of view, reaction times of the engines, and this is when how the avionic, let's say, with support, let's say, the flight condition, and in order before implementing it into Stern. So it's really a test bed of what we want to do.
Of course, that's why it's so important to test
Exactly.
it in a small scale and then
Exactly. Exactly.
make adapt it to the bigger rocket. Although that comes with its own challenges, as you were
Exactly.
mentioning before.
Exactly.
Now moving into the market. I mean, there's a trend in the industry. Also, Rocket Lab has done it with Electron, and now moving into the development of Neutron. Some other players are also building or attempting to build larger rockets. What are your views on the small launcher market?
I think that there are two trends. Maybe in the beginning, there were only, let's say, the vehicle side, and little by little, we are moving into end-to-end space companies. And Rocket Lab understood it quite, let's say, fast after the development of Neutron, where they tried, let's say, to focus maybe on the business of space systems so far, and after to develop, let's say, satellites, and before building a bigger vehicle. And I think that following, let's say, this approach of building a small vehicle then a bigger vehicle is more suitable, let's say, from a European point of view of incremental development. And this is how, at least we view it at Opus, is that we want to not to build maybe incremental phases and incremental, let's say, vehicle or business units, and to try, let's say, to like innovative standardization, let's say, of let's say the different business unit who have, let's say, the same kind of R&D, in order not to invest each time in a new, let's say, project and so on. And to give you, for example, to give you an example, for example, is that the engine that we are currently building for Messange can be used as well as a kick stage, or can be used as well. There is a branch where we are currently focused on, which is kind of LCS systems, and technology is kind of the same. So we are quite mature on this side, so we don't need to invest a lot into developing a whole, let's say, new system. And this is how we see, let's say, the launch market so far. Are we, let's say, in the process of doing a bigger vehicle than Sterne? Currently, we are not thinking about it. What we are focusing on is more on building the vehicle and then do exploitation of the vehicle and then building the other vehicle. We are not going to stop Messange like after the first launch. We're going to continue to generate revenue with it and then to focus on Sterne after.
It goes back to what you said at the start of focusing on your core product.
Exactly.
And then, once you develop and mature it, you can take the next step, right?
Exactly, yes.
I guess
exactly,
it's a very clever approach.
Exactly, yes.
What's your opinion on or what do you think, no? Because in Europe now there are several launcher companies. Perhaps some of them didn't exist when you started your company. But what do you think now of the market? How does it look like, and who do you think is the first company who will reach space in Europe?
It's a big question. I think that there's a lot of company currently in Europe, and I think it's a good thing. A lot of people think it's a bad thing, but I think it's a good thing that we have a lot of companies, especially at this stage of the development. I think that we need, let's say, multiple approach, multiple views, and multiple philosophy in order, let's say, to develop maybe let's say the right launch solution for Europe. As it happened, let's say, in other business as new space, then the new space, for example, in food tech, or in there's as well in retail delivery tech in Europe when it was during COVID and so on, with the explosion of fast delivery and so on. I think it will happen the same for rocket companies. There will be maybe a consolidation of the market this year or next year or in the upcoming year. And we'll see it from, let's say, investment point of view, or even from a technological point of view. And I think it's first one to get into space is, I don't think will be kind of the winner or something, but it will be a good, I think it will be a good impression, or a good green light to say that a startup in Europe, a launch startup in Europe, developed a rocket on private fund and launched it. And it's the beauty of the thing, I think. And I think it will a bit accelerate maybe other initiative, or maybe stop other initiative who are not quite a bit early in the development. But also it will maybe set a first step into the consolidation of the market or something like that. But currently, I think that all the initiatives are good, to be honest, and that we need to continue this way currently.
It's true that the moment a private European company reaches space is going to be a big milestone for the whole industry, right?
Yes, because honestly, yes.
It's sort of a sign of hope, no? That there's
exactly. Honestly, it will be really. Of course, we are, let's say, in competition and so on, but as let's say a space industry or new space industry, sometimes we need to stick together as well. And I think it's a good sign, to be honest. It's a really good sign.
Now, what do you think of the people, or of the opinions that go on saying that there should be a more centralized funding instead of diluting or sharing, distributing the same amount of funding into many players, sticking or choosing 2 or 3 and betting big on them, instead of trying to please everybody? What do you think
I
of that?
think it's only I think it's only a bit philosophy I think we find here in Europe, where we're not a lot risk takers somehow, but it's only a philosophy of the continent. But it's okay. We need to work with that, and we need to accept it and to try to push what we can. I think that we can't invest into one player. I think we need to invest into multiple player. We'll succeed or no. It will build at least let's say engineers, and as well documentation, technical documentation, and let's say technology, and other companies can benefit from it, or agencies or institutional actors or labs can benefit from it. And I think I think it's a good thing to invest into innovation, because I don't think that uh, if you centralize it, if you centralize into one player, this one player will execute right the development. I don't think that innovation comes through investing into one player, and more importantly, not investing at all, because we'll be in a stacking point, and we need to invest in order to advance.
You made a very good point, because on the last episode I spoke with Claudio Piazzai, who's the Chief Operating Officer of Involved Space, and Involved Space took on a lot of knowledge from Project Loon, which was
Exactly.
a project from Google to build stratospheric balloons, no? Which is what Involved Space are doing, and so they've built on top of what Google left, which
Exactly.
this is the value of investing in innovation, because the project that a company works on might or might not work, but all the knowledge and all the innovation that and the projects that are built around that are not necessarily lost, and other people can come and build on top of them.
Yeah, I completely agree. There's a book from Zero to One of Peter Thiel talking about, let's say, startup philosophy, and it was really a view from his side about how it works and what is the philosophy behind and how we choose, let's say, the investment and so on. And it was really really interesting to understand why, let's say, investing into startup is a good thing, even though, and then after he does, let's say, comparison between between US, Europe, and other, let's say, other continents and so on, and you can learn a lot about the difference of culture, why here is like this, why here is like that. But I think Europe is a wonderful place for space to be. Maybe some people will not say, okay, I don't know what, or maybe they lack of investment. But to be completely honest, it's a really wonderful place to building a space company, because in Europe we have a good expertise in space, and we can see what we have done so far with the Ariane program when we work all together, and it's really so far a good thing, I think, and we developed a lot of expertise into satellite launchers, and we are really lucky to be part of this space journey with Opus.
That's true, because often we tend to simplify the space market into just rockets, and there's a lot more than just rockets. Of course,
Exactly.
rockets are the door that takes you to your access to space.
It's only like the kind of the bus or the Uber, if I may. But the most important part is all the service that can benefit, let's say, for Europeans or for citizens of the world, such as Copernicus or Galileo, and as well, and hopefully Iris Square as well.
That's very interesting. Now, what do you think? You were mentioning, the difference between the US and Europe. Let's touch on that topic for a minute. What do you think of the transporter missions from SpaceX? Because they are clearly disrupting the small launcher market, right?
Yeah, exactly. They are really disrupting, let's say, the space launcher market. But I think there's it go back to the same thing. They want a ride shared, or they want a tailored lunch. And are you willing to pay more to be put, let's say, in the right place at the right date or when you want? Even though there's transportation, let's say, mission, I think they launch every quarter, if I'm not mistaken. There's 5 per year, and with a lot of different, let's say, small satellite or launch providers. And we only need, let's say, what we want from our side is to propose really a tailor-made launch solution for the small satellite or small payload. So I think it's a good thing that transportation mission exists, because currently it enable small satellite to be launched. to be completely transparent, I don't think there is another solution beside this or Rocket Lab, and this is the case. And I think it's a good thing currently. But I think that if we want to be more flexible, more, let's say, affordable, and more precise, we need a small launch solution for sure in Europe.
Indeed. And what's your opinion on this surge of mega constellations?
I think it's a continuity of the growth of a launch company or the space economy. I think that we are living in an amazing, let's say, era where we need a world which is more connected. We need to explore, let's say, the universe, and there will be a lot of different applications from a development point of view, such as let's say in orbit service, or as well as space exploration or space robotics, and that we need really to have, let's say, the different, let's say, vehicles, or the different, let's say, satellites, in order, let's say, to support, let's say, this growing economy.
That's true. That's true. That, of course, it's the segment in the satellite industry which is most growing, or growing the most. But of course, there's still, I guess this is your view, there's still a big room for dedicated small satellites who will want to reach orbit independently and individually.
I think it's the same as well for satellite. When you want to do a constellation, you start with a small satellite. I think it's the same as well for launchers, and we can see it as well in Europe. There's a lot of small satellite companies. They start with 1U CubeSat, then 3U, then it's a 500. It's a 50 kilogram satellite, and then little by little it increases until to 200 and so on. So I think that with, let's say, the launch solution, our launch solution or small launcher solution, we can provide, let's say, a solution that can adapt, let's say, to this growing economy. And as a launcher need to get bigger, as we said before, a satellite as well need to get bigger. And this is the next steps.
Now, what's your experience with the European regulation? Building rockets is definitely not easy from a technical point of view, but also from a regulation point of view, right?
Yes, I think that I think there is two ways of seeing this. I think that the startup ecosystem is maybe a bit young. I think it's been like 10 years or more, like let's say 10 to 15 years that there is, let's say, this startup mood in Europe and so on. And that we developed so far investment instruments or supporting, let's say, initiative from regulation, from investment. So far, we have been a bit struggling about how to approach this, because sometimes you discover stuff when you are in the process itself. The thing is, what people don't say, that you are not only the one who discover it. Let's say even the institutional side as well. So in the end, there is kind of a way where the institutional, let's say, partner learn from, let's say, the industrial partner, and the industrial partner learn from the industrial institutional entity. So I think it's the process. Currently, the process is ongoing of, let's say, transforming or reducing the regulation. I think so far in the European Commission they are talking about it more and more. From our side, I think from in space with Europe and the French Space Agency, from my side, in our case, plus the European Space Agency, they are thinking about how they can, let's say, adapt the current, let's say, regulation to small launchers and so on, because we don't have sometimes the same funding capacity or the same teams, or in order to think about the process, how to adapt, let's say, this current regulation to the project. In our case, to talk about the Messange project, it was a thing that we were thinking about, and we worked on with the CNES. It was a big thing, so it took longer than expected. It was, for example, for the lunch as well for the testing facility, it was the same. So basically, it took us around 9 to 12 months to get the testing facility. Yeah, in 12 months, I think we can die 3 times as a startup, but it's okay. And from the lunch point of view, it took us several months, but I don't know how many. I don't have these, but it took us a lot. And we worked together on which regulation we need to follow. Is it the space law or the transportation law, and so on. And then after, there's all the juridical side with the insurance. It took a bit of time, but in the end, it was really like a ping pong, to be completely transparent. And this is where we saw that the institutional actor, as I told it in the beginning, like when you have an idea and you want to advance and so on, and you have the funding and you have the vision, and you want to do this, and you explain what you want to do and the objective, they are in the role to help you, and they do it. I think that in the upcoming year, the challenge will be to maybe adapt the regulation, and let's say the strict too much, let's say, paperwork, in order to help, let's say, these companies, let's say, pass through, let's say, these barriers, and hopefully it will end up into less regulation little by little. So they say, okay, if we can adapt it and do it this way, why not keeping this way? You see what I mean? But in the end, if you currently have the regulations set in place, and all the companies are respecting the current regulation, for sure that you don't need to change. But as there's a lot of startups who want to reduce and want to change the way we do, I think we need to listen to this, let's say, growing demand, and to make it easier for everyone.
Of course, because while you were mentioning this, if there's regulation in Europe, and there's, and you take 12 months, 9 to 12 months to build your test site, and in the US, a similar startup to yours takes a month, 3 months max in setting up their test site, of course they're going to reach the market faster, right? So it's key to stay competitive.
And I don't know if I think in the US, let's say, some companies launch their rocket, not companies, but I think Rocketry Club launch the rocket in the desert, I don't know if we can do the same here, but for sure there's a lot of regulations so far, but like it's a game, like you need to accept the rules and to play with it. And for sure, there's one famous entrepreneur in France. His name is Xavier Niel. He's like the founder of Free, let's say, a big telecom company. And he say, like, each time, like, you need to let's say to play with the yellow line, but not to cross it. But you play with it a bit. This is how I think it's the best way to let's say be in line, but not to cross the line. Well,
that's a good approach indeed, so that you take it to the limit without crossing it, right?
Exactly, without crossing it, never crossing it, because when you cross it, it's another subject. But each time you play with the limit, yes, for sure.
Now, briefly mentioning, you mentioned how to approach investors and so on. Mm-hmm. How do you approach investors? How do you share your vision, and how do you stay unique at a time when there's other rocket companies that might seem they offer the same services?
I think that it depends on which stage the company is, what you want to do, and what is the technology. In our case, we are, I guess, one of the few companies we're developing a suborbital vehicle and a commercial one. I don't think there's, if I'm not mistaken, I don't think there is a company in Europe doing this. I think in space launcher company, from what I know, all of the company I know are focusing more on the orbital one. This is where I guess we are in a good position. I think doing it in France, in our case, from a suborbital vehicle was a good choice for us because there's a big defense, let's say, industry in France, and this is where Messange get a big, let's say, impact, and this is why we want to focus on this vehicle. So approaching a VC or investor is kind of sometimes by the network, or sometimes you only send the pitch, or you meet the right people, or you talk to them through LinkedIn. In our first round, I guess I talked to a lot of people through LinkedIn, through Business Angel Club, or through let's say a relationship I had with some entrepreneurs I knew, and I was introduced to some and so on. And this is how we closed our first funding. And so basically, you do let's say you prepare documentation, the data room, your pitch deck, and then you pitch, and then you try to calibrate, sorry, the story and the feedbacks that they give you. It's quite important to listen to the feedbacks, and to I think because sometimes they are not willing to invest in the beginning, but they will follow the story and invest maybe in the next round. And it happened to us. It happened to me personally in our development so far, and sometimes not the right moment for them as well. And sometimes you are quite early to the VCs, or to the business angel, or to the financial institution, and you need to really, so there is kind of a vision for short selling, and there is as well the plan, and little by little, from what I see, there were, let's say, I think a window of investment in early around 2000, between 2019 and 2022, into space company. So I guess we see currently the players of Europe, European players, launchers and so on, which are bold. And little by little, there is kind of now, for example, I think that VCs and the financial industry expect a bit of result, if you see what I mean. So we invested a lot, and now what is the return, and how a market will react. So I think we'll see it in this. Is why we were talking about consolidation market before. So I think we'll see it in the upcoming years, maybe 2 years. That's
Now,
it.
now slowly closing the interview.
Mhm.
What a question on your team? How do you being the co-founder and the CEO,
Mhm.
how do you build a great technical team?
I think building the right team is a bit challenging, and I think you need to focus on two sides, the technical one, but also on the personal. And this is quite important. Sometimes a person can be quite good from a technical point of view, but from a personal one, not really. So it will impact the whole team, especially when you have a small team building a vehicle and a rocket. And there's a lot of collaboration between the teams and so on. And so we met. I met a lot of, let's say, late founders, or technical engineers and so on, by our network at the beginning. So we really hired, let's say, our first let's say person through the network, and this is how we build, let's say, the company from ground one to ground zero, from ground one. And afterward, we hired all our executives from one of my associate and investors introduced me, for example, to our current CFO, Magali. And this is how I met her so far. And it was quite a good fit because she worked in a startup environment, the European one. We went to the US and got sold and so on. So we have really, so she saw the global, let's say, cycle. She was in cybersecurity. And currently we hire people through not really network, less now on the technical side, more through LinkedIn or through, let's say, recruitment channel. And what we do in the process, let's say, of recruiting, let's say, the persons, is that we do, let's say, technical, for example, but sometimes I talk even to people from not the department at all. for the technical department to other departments, only to get feedback about the person, about what they think about what the other person think about it, and so on. So in order to have in the end a good consolidated team and a good collaborative environment.
Now, this also brings the question: what's the most challenging thing for you as a CEO, as a CEO?
Human resources. Not the rest is financing. I think that the big thing from I think the company, in order for a company to succeed, you need to have the right people, and you need to have a good team, and more importantly, to a team that can advance into one goal, like a clear goal. This is how we can let's say advance all together and build something all together. And I think this is quite the big challenge for our side. It takes a long time to, let's say, set the culture, structure the team, set, let's say, the proper milestone, and work on this. And I think it's one of the big challenge I think I see in Opus. From funding point of view and technical point of view, a technical, let's say, point of view, I think it's as you execute, let's say, the development, you reach the milestone. I don't think it will be a big problem from a development point of view. But I think one of the most challenging as an entrepreneur is that you translate your vision into an execution plan, and you make sure that all the people who are inside the company focus on the executing plan. So it's something that I find really important to do and to build. And sometimes maybe I make try it, sometimes not really. So we calibrate it, and we talk with the team, and we try to build it together. But honestly, team is quite great.
But that's a big challenge, of course. And at the same time, it's super important, as you said, because you have to inspire and to guide
Exactly.
and to set the goal, no, for the rest of the team.
Exactly. This is I think this is the most important thing, like to aspire and to guide. This is why people, I think, want to come in the morning to work into the company, because there is a clear vision, there is a clear goal, and you know that you are working into a clear goal, and you are working in advancing space exploration, or you are working in developing a launch solution. And this is what I think will motivate people. Of course, there is a good side of going to Kourou and launch a rocket, which is which is obviously a good thing, but it's kind of the in French we say la cerise sur le gâteau, like the cherry on the pie, and this is the, let's say, the final thing. But for sure, I think we are all passionate by space, and working in it as an engineers and so on. We transform our dreams somehow to reality a bit, especially during this time.
Indeed, it's a great time to be alive in the space industry, because
honestly, yes, really, yes, we are really lucky.
And what would be your piece of advice to someone who's looking to start or thinking about starting his own space startup?
I think that my piece of advice is to start, to be honest. I think a lot of people focus too much on on why if it fails, what happened if I don't do this, what happened if I don't get that. I think the big advice I can give is to start and to really never give up. I think to really be in a position where you think more about the solution to the problem than to the problem itself. And I think you need to be kind of a solution guy, and this is what founders do. Basically, they only get let's say, people think that they do conferences and so on, but the thing is that they only solve the shitty problem that nobody wants to solve in order, let's say, to accelerate the development. So they really focus on this. They, okay, I'm gonna solve this, so company will advance. So really, like, you find yourself doing things that you say, yeah, why do this? But you don't have a choice. You need to do it in order so the company advance. And I think that the really important advice is to start and to focus on the solution. Focusing on the solution means when you have a problem, you try to understand why and how, what happened, what are the consequences, how to solve it, and you are kind of you are focusing on the solution, meaning that you are going to talk to the client to understand more their problem and to deep dive into their problem. The more you deep dive into the problem, the more you understand what are kind of the barrier, what is kind of the solution, and how to build it. And the more you discuss, the more you find it, and you have the right market fit indeed. And the thing is, really to start and to keep going, just keep going. That's it.
But like your experience is particularly interesting, I would say, because you started the company quite young, and it wasn't an ordinary company. It was a rocket company, which is extremely capital intensive, extremely technically challenging, and yet you indeed kept going and didn't give up. And well, here you are, no? Soon to launch your suborbital rocket.
Yes. Honestly, I didn't. I'm quite lucky to be here and to be in a situation where we are going to launch our first rocket. Honestly, I really there's still a lot of challenges ahead, but honestly, I'm really lucky. When I see a bit about all the experience I had and so on, it's kind of like as Steve Jobs said, like you connect the dot looking backward, and it's really like if I didn't do Percy's program, I wouldn't have maybe met class experts. I wouldn't have let's say the expertise in building solid rockets. I wouldn't have said, okay, we do a rocket company. So it's really something. It's really fun, to be honest, and a good time to be alive, to be honest. I'm quite excited.
I think we can leave it here.
Yes.
I know you've got plenty of things to do, and the most important one is to prepare for a launch, which will come. When is the launch date?
It will be around Q3, Q4 2025. Currently, we are focusing around September or October. I think it will be around these dates. There will be a big testing around between April, May, June until July, and then afterward we'll focus on this from September and October. For sure, each time it linked it to the testing and where we are, let's say, on this side, but we are quite focusing doing it in 2025, and I think we'll achieve it in 2025. I'm quite confident regarding this.
Awesome. I can't wait to watch it and to watch you succeed.
I will let you know to the listeners as well, and I will share with you let's say the big news and so on. I will try to do so, please.
Indeed. Well, Safouane, it's been a pleasure.
Thanks a lot for having me. It was a really nice talk, and I hope that you will enjoy the story.
And more to come in the future.
For sure. Thanks a lot.